listen, you lost your best friend. You're back against the wall, don't even know what happened.
This season overall just has a lot of teams with a strong potential, but we will see how well they can actually execute and how well they will mesh together.
Search for the bottom of this before the ship sails. Relationships.
Our goal is to at least do the top 2 and try to get first place in standings.
The Unicorns of Love, they bounce back to win 2-1 and remain in control of Group B.
Right now they have a really good grasp on how to play the meta and they are fetched together already.
Some people gonna bend and twist hard for the win.
Our lineup is probably the lineup in LCS that has the most planning to it. I see us going really far.
Of the UOL 2017 Spring Split. Week 3 of competition is about to get underway here in Berlin, and it's going to be a good one. Trust us on that one as we see Splyce and Yamato Cannon preparing to take to the stage. Kavi as well as Woma and his troops also preparing for match number 1. There they are in the huddle as well. Need to get the morale up before going on stage. Good evening, I'm Evie Supporter, joined by Martin the Fish Lunge and Mitch Kreppel-Voorspoels. Hello, gentlemen. Week 3 already.
Already?
It's going fast.
It is actually going very fast.
Yep.
Who's going to win the split?
The fans.
The casters.
I felt a little bit like Who's That Pokemon vibe when they came on the desk. You know,
Who's that
Oh, it's Deficio. Never mind.
Sadly. All right.
Weird track, you know.
Well, before we get into the games, let's look at the standings as you asked him who wins the split. Well, if it would end now, G2 to Esports and Unicorns of Love would have a pretty good chance. They are leading Group A and Group B respectively.
Yeah, and so far, I mean, I think well-deserved both teams. G2, obviously, we expect them to be like the #1 team in Europe. Splyce has some catching up to do. They have a chance today, though.
Yeah, and after this week, every team will have played within their group, and next week we're moving to cross-group play, which is going to make it very exciting. I can't wait to see some of these matchups between Group A and Group B as well.
And some of those teams at the bottom really need to get some wins on the board.
I agree.
And we will be bringing you 2 best-of-3s this evening, starting, as said, with Splyce taking on the Unicorns of Love and Fnatic versus Misfits. And also, we are playing on patch 7.2 with Warwick enabled, so that might be another extra flavor that we'll see in the matches today.
I hear very mixed things about Warwick and from own experience as well. He can be very annoying to play against, but I think in competitive, he has quite a lot of weaknesses. So I don't think we'll see him every game.
I think it's definitely possible for Warwick Jungle to make a really bad mid laner go 0-5 in mid lane. If he's off-roll, that could happen. In competitive play, I actually don't know yet.
All right, well, we will see. Our first match pits Group B leaders, the Unicorns of Love, against Splyce. First, let's talk about the Unicorns. They are 3-0. They are the leaders of Group B, but I think it's fair to say that there are a lot of varying opinions about their performance, about their style, and you guys wanted to break it down.
Yeah, the Unicorns. We talked about a lot of teams this week in the office, but the main talk was still around these, bandits of love and their style. There was pros, there were cons, and we tried to sum it up in basically 5 or 6 points that summarize the Unicorns right now. But Martin, because you're so negative, let's start off with the bad ones.
Yeah, I'm the negative. Okay, fine. One of the first bad ones we had is like the weak early game. You just saw on your screen the little lower third there saying that focus on scaling picks. It's something the Unicorns do a lot, and obviously that cost you early on. But also they do get ganked a lot and actually get caught a lot in these lanes here, especially Exile is a very easy target so far, dies a lot early. And that is a problem for the Unicorns.
Yeah, they need to shore up these weaknesses because even when they get behind in the early game, they play the exact same way later on as they do in the early game, whether they're behind or ahead. So this is kind of weird. But their style is mainly centered around hard engages right now, because we see Hylissang here going in, but Exile's nowhere close, Samux is trailing, Xerxes isn't even a fight by the time Hylissang gets bopped, and that seems to be a weakness, this over-aggression.
Yeah, exactly, and it's often Hylissang who's actually the man, like trying to start these fights. He plays on the edge quite often, and when the team is ahead and in control, he can really create some insane picks. But when they are behind, he ends up overextending very often. He gets caught out, they die, and they fall further behind. And that is one of the big weaknesses for the Unicorns of Love lineup.
But yeah, then there is kind of a neutral point that we say you can interpret it positively or negatively, depending on how you look at it, is that the Unicorns of Love has zero hesitation. They're used to this style, and even when it backfires, they're still going to go in. And that is the beauty of it, because seemingly Hylissang here gets caught. Normally, a lot of people would let him die, move away. but they fight their way out.
They fight their way out. It surprised a lot of teams. Honestly, very few teams can actually go toe-to-toe in some of these fights here. And why we say it's both, you know, a positive and a negative in that sense is because sometimes when they do then pick the fight, it's actually the wrong time. Yeah. And they end up losing out. But we have seen lately they've been winning a lot of these team fights here. And I think that comes down to our first of the really good points, which is the target selection in fights for the Unicorns of Love. Like, it is beautiful to watch how Exile and the rest of the team are able to kind of pick targets left and right and do it much better than most teams in Europe.
Yeah, they have the patience to wait to go in. Here they're playing a complex composition that I personally didn't like that much, but in review, if you have the patience and you go in and you get the resets, yes, you can argue HK didn't play it perfectly, but they bide their time, and then once the ball starts rolling, they clean up so well. And this target selection is the thing that is really hard to train and improve on as a team.
Yeah, we just saw Samux and Exile here literally hit the same targets all the time. Samux from very long range on Jhin, and then Exile, the guy finishing on Katarina. And that is fantastic synergy. The other really positive thing about the Unicorns of Love is like this very unique approach to the pick and ban phase, the compositions they play, and how to use them in-game. It is so difficult to play and draft against because you don't really know what to expect. Like, we've tried to predict some of their things. Like, it's impossible because you look at like trends from everywhere else in the world, and then you try and put it into Unicorns, it never works. It's always different
whenever
things.
you preface the segments, Korea would pick this champion here. The Unicorns pick Ivern. Or they had this composition. I mean, maybe it's not as weird as a comp, but they really used Malzahar and Trundle well because so often you're thinking about Malzahar, make a pick, but they were using the Trundle ultimate to just burn down the tanks with the Malzahar ulti, and they just play well as a team. So if they can shore up those early game weaknesses and maybe play sometimes meta, sometimes weird, I think they're definitely a top contender.
And with Warwick in there, they have another thing to put into the mix. A very nice breakdown of the positives, the negatives, and the neutral things, and we will be tracking this throughout their match as well. You heard what we think about the Unicorns of Love, and to hear about their opponent Splyce, as well as get into picks and bans, we're going to head over to our casters.
Thank you very much, Jackson. Hello, esports connoisseurs. I'm Devin Pyrotechnics Young. I'm ready to dish this best of 3 buffet with Andrew Vedius Day. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Already quick with the smart licks.
Snappy, it's what we're doing. I mean, wow, you've got a million of them already. Let's not waste any time. Let's run down the starting rosters, starting with the Unicorns of Love. That, of course, means up in the top lane, we have Vizichachi, followed by Xerxes in the jungle, Exile on mid, Samix at AD carry, support Hylissang, and their coach, Sheepy.
And they are currently sitting at the top of Group B, but Splyce are looking to add a mark to their loss record, and they will be playing on the blue side of the Rift with their top laner Wonder. In the jungle is Trashy, their mid laner Senkirks, on AD carry is Kobe, their support Mickey, and their coach Yamato Cannon.
Yep, Splyce is a team that has definitely got a big challenge ahead of them right now, and they've just been so back and forth. We've only seen 2 performances out of them, and you can hardly get different results.
I mean, that's
More
exactly
different
it.
results.
You've got such contrasting things where in week 1 we saw very questionable drafts, blind picking, or the Katarina pick in particular, the performances overall in terms of their map movements, a lot of their early game decisions were very questionable. And even in week 2, we saw a couple of shaky things like when they played around the Baron, you know, like going for that 50-50 smite when they shouldn't have.
Still won, but...
Yes, but it was much better performance in week 2 compared to week 1. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what sort of Splyce has now come to today's table.
Well, we're about to find out. We loaded the picks and bans. Zyra's off the table to start things off, and the ban side goes to Unicorns, quickly taking the LeBlanc away. We are in patch 7.2, but so far the bans haven't changed much.
Yep. The biggest difference now on patch 7.2 is Courage of the Colossus was nerfed. So in terms of prioritization of tanks, we may very well see a shift away from the Maokai, from the Nautilus, more towards the Shen and the Poppy. Those that can take better use of Grasp of the Undying.
Yep, very well indeed. Splyce have banned out 2 supports. They now opt for the Ivern, taking away one of Xerxes' preferred champions. The Rengar's now banned. That leaves Kha'Zix up to start things off for Trashy if he's going to lock that in.
Certainly does. Wow, on the money today, Pyra. Already getting ahead of the game.
It's almost like I watch these games.
It's almost like that. So now if you're Unicorns, you have a lot of freedom. Looks like they're actually going to prioritize that Shen that we were just talking about. And if I was the Unicorns, I feel you should look to pick up your AD carry right now.
So they locked the Varus, also right on the money. But that does mean there's always the Jhin, the Ashe available as well. How do you like the matchup? Who would you prefer to see Splyce pick up as an AD carry?
I feel like Splyce could go for the Jhin. Kobe and Mickey have highly prioritized, well, they played a bit of everything. Interesting that Kobe has played more Jhin than he has any other AD carry. However, he has only played 4 games. That's not a huge amount, but he's been going... Wow, okay, wow.
right.
This bacon ban is
Sorry
going
to
incredibly
interrupt
quickly.
you, but
yeah,
we got a real quick Warwick, and we're into ban phase 2. So Unicorns, Xerxes, just give me that. Give me it. I want it.
Okay,
Jason's banned
so
away now.
we've actually got the Warwick. Now, this was something that I was talking to some of the junglers about, and they said if Kha'Zix and Rengar are off the table, then the possibility for Warwick actually increases. The fact that he's been picked into the Kha'Zix, though, is very surprising. Really excited to see how this one works out. But already now, if you're Splyce, you can look to start pinching away. Well, I mean, you've already pinched the support, so if you're looking to pinch something else, I mean...
That's 4 support bans.
It's very interesting. So Unicorns of Love decided to pinch away the top laners. So now they could look to early prioritize the Rise for Exile. He has put a lot of value on it. Good scaling mid laner that works into a number of matchups. You have to be careful of Syndra, yet to be nerfed on patch 7.2. But
someone lock the Lulu.
Another buff that we have actually seen on this patch is the Lulu. You and I were talking about this earlier on, Pyro, where maybe we could see them bringing out. It's not the biggest buff in the world. She gets a little bit more damage.
No, but Illy was playing it already. I mean,
exactly.
yeah, you might as well take a little bit extra. So we still wait to see what the last pickup is going to be for Unicorns. But of course, Splyce, they have to lock their side. When Sencooks has had to blind pick, he has typically been going for this Corki. A lot of mid laners are doing this. It's now locked in for them. And their last choice, well, the Rumble was up and available. Why not run it into the Shen? That looks like to be Splyce's answer.
My biggest concern for Splyce right now is their lack of frontline. I feel like that a Poppy may have been a slightly safer option and works very nicely into the Shen. Nevertheless, they've gone for a more aggressive top laner, and it looks like oh my word, that is...
Oh my goodness, that's
like,
a lot of damage.
This is what they were talking about on the analyst desk, though. You cannot predict the draft phase for the Unicorns of Love. Rise would have been a safe pick. You could have gone for the Orianna. Nope, we're going for the Katarina, we're going for the Snowball. Exile had a great game on it last week, and he's looking to repeat that performance.
Yeah, and Sencooks, I mean, he's been able to play into it, but when he's been able to counter pick it, that's what the Mordekaiser was all about. But this is going to be completely different. So Exile got his hands on the Katarina one more time. They've got a Lulu to protect some of their damage. Unicorns have just drafted quite the composition. I wonder what Splyce can do to take them out.
I mean, both comps are very exciting. I have to be honest, this is the first time I've ever seen a Warwick cat comp. I think ever.
Patch 7.2 is a wonderful thing, isn't it?
Patch 7.2, I mean, people wanted more variation in the meta, and it seems like that we've already started to get it. Really excited to see both these teams match up. And I mean, if you are currently top of Group B, what a way to show at them with a classic Unicorns of Love comp.
Oh, no kidding. Oh, Yamato Cannon just waiting for Sheepy here as they'll be shaking hands to get off stage, but we're not quite loaded up. We're not quite ready. Man, I think that's definitely taken everybody by surprise. And Sheepy, big smile on his face. That's going to be good.
I'm excited. I couldn't. So the interesting thing about Warwick, we can talk a lot more about it when we actually get into game.
Right.
But he is fun, right? He's a lot of fun to play. He can be a bit of a nuisance.
It's definitely fun. I got to cut you off, though, Vedius, because Unicorns of Love, they're sitting at the top of the table right now. Can Splyce ruin their perfect record? We're going to find out as we head into game number 1.
And Semix gets another taunt for Chachi. Unicorns are marching into this, and they're looking for the victory.
Trashy had already taken out Nuke Duck. It's a double kill to the Rengar of all people. Splyce clean house. Crowd always gets loud when the Unicorns of Love are on the Rift. Today is no exception, with Xerxes bringing out the first Warwick we're seeing in competitive play on patch 7.2.
So let's talk about Warwick.
Why not?
His early jungle clear is actually very good. I mean, you can see with the amount of sustain, so for those that are unaware, let's just run through the abilities and how the new Warwick works. His passive now, he gets a bit of extra magic damage on him, right? Which is, means he's cool, he's pretty difficult to trade against, but once he drops below 50%, then he starts getting sustain back. He starts to heal up from his auto attacks, and when he's below 25%, that heal triples. So you can see that in terms of his jungle clear, he's pretty sustainable, he can get through it relatively easily, and when he comes to looking for ganks, he's already in a pretty good position. The problem is his early crowd control is fairly weak. The only CC he really has is on his E, which is a little shield that eventually reduces damage during the duration, and then it procs a 1-second fear at the end of it. So in terms of his early ganking, it's not the strongest, but if you have good laners to help facilitate that, then he could be very risky because his damage in the early game is surprisingly high.
All right, well, let's talk about how he's going to be facing off against Trashy, because we talked about it being an option to take Warwick when Kha'Zix and Rengar were both off the table, but Trashy was the one who picked the Kha'Zix. What should Xerxes be doing to try and avoid Trashy's early game?
Well, I mean, this is a big question because what we need to identify is, notice that Kha'Zix has actually decided to start topside, right? So this means that the Rumble's going to be playing aggressively. He's going to know that Cersei also started topside because the Shen will have just come back to lane from giving him a pull. So Wonder can afford to be aggressive. If Trashy's going to look to play aggressive anywhere, it's likely going to be the bottom because they do have push priority with the Lulu and the Varus. You can see that they've already started to put a bit of harass down onto both Mickey and Kobby. And if he's going to gank anywhere, we'll be here. So Xerxes should just prioritize setting up vision around the bottom half. In terms of an early skirmish, I would give the slight edge over to Kha'Zix simply because of his utility and damage. But that's not to say that Xerxes can't bring out some surprises.
Speaking of early skirmishes, I mean, Mickey and Hylissang have been trading pretty heavily with each other there. And, well, there is your patch 7.2. No more Courage of the Colossus. Of course, not a lot of champions that you would put it on anyways. But it's been a while since we've seen none of those masteries show up. Trashy will run into Xerxes. Trashy already low. He's feared. He's going to have to leap away. And Xerxes eyeballing these double bombs. It's going to be first blood to Exile.
What a way to start for the Unicorns. You were asking Pyra, how is Cersei going to deal with Trashy? Well, he's going to catch him by surprise. He's just going to swat the bug out in the river. He's going to bait him. I mean, honestly, I don't know why Trashy held onto his flash for so long, why he ran towards the Katarina, but giving Katarina first blood this early into the game and a double buff is a great way for the Unicorns to start off.
Oh, Senkux could be in for a world of hurt now with Exile. 2-level advantage pushing him in with a big wave that should change down to just 1, but Exile's free to roam about. Talk about getting some deep vision right now. It's going to be hard for Trashy to get rolling.
I mean, we talked about the early pathing for these junglers, and the great thing about Warwick is he actually has a relatively decent clear speed. He can get through the jungle pretty quickly. He was able to get to the river first. We talked about how we were likely to see both junglers in the bottom river, and it was just because Trashy got there slightly slower and Cersei was able to set up that gank. The Unicorns now get themselves the first blood. And you know, this is just a great start for the Unicorns team.
Yeah, you really can't get much better than this right now with the first blood, the buff transfer, and only 4 minutes into this game, they're looking at 900 gold in the lead is definitely nothing to sneeze at. Trashy moves his way up to the top side to try and scrounge a little bit more jungle, or instead he's actually just going to be grabbing some vision. We'll see where he heads. Exile is hot on his tail right now as he sends the Scryer's Bloom out. Should be taking the Blast Cone Express into the Krug camp.
And we talked about, you're just highlighting the gold differences, and this is quite interesting because we were wondering which Splyce was going to actually turn up this week. We wanted to know whether or not it was going to be week 1 Splyce or week 2 Splyce, and you can see the difference. This is the percentage of time that was spent in the lead in terms of gold, and in week 1, you can see that it was pretty low for the team of Splyce, and in week 2 it was significantly above. So it was so contrasting, such a big difference. We might not have time for that. Senkux.
Ooh, instant exhaust, but there's a Shunpo. Exile can't finish the job. Senkux gets out of that one, but I think tying it back into what you were talking about, Senkux himself kind of had a lot to say on his own performance in week number 1, and honestly took a lot of responsibility. He played the Katarina during that weekend. He just pretty much flat out said, I was awful.
Yeah, he was. Went back and watched the games. He definitely made a lot of risky decisions because with the Katarina in particular, you want to be playing aggressive in the laning phase. And if you can't, then you're just going to keep getting pushed underneath the turret. You're going to get denied a lot of farm and experience. And the fact that Exile got this first blood and a double buff means that he is not afraid to play aggressively against this Corki. That's why he's consistently diving in. And now, the fact that he's already completed his Bilgewater Cutlass is a great start for the Katarina.
Yeah, no kidding. So, Exile could be set up for quite a solid game on his side. Splyce, they're going to try and hold out to see if they can get themselves into this mid-game power spike. You've got the Rumble, you've got the Corki, you've got the Kha'Zix. If he does get rolling, they can do a lot of damage, but the team fighting is kind of the more Unicorn style of play. Splyce typically have drafted for side lanes.
And the interesting thing about Unicorns is they've drafted a pretty solid team fight composition. Their crowd control is lacking slightly, but when you have a look at the ways in which they set up, you have a Shen flank, where you have the Shen ulti. You can just put the Shen ulti on top of the Warwick, he dives in, and then you've got this really big, beefy front line that is effectively soaking up all this damage, buying time for the Cat to set up. You have the Varus ultimate as well. And because the Warwick is diving in, you then have the Lulu support too. So whoever initiates the fight for Unicorns, they have a lot of peel, and it becomes difficult for Splyce.
Yeah, it really will. I think Wonder, they're going to have to rely quite heavily on some well-placed ultimates out of him. Really want to see who ends up stepping up on this Splyce side because it really has been kind of back and forth, and I don't know if you can really rely on Senkux to really be a carry when he's on something safe like Corki.
Well, that's one of the big things for Senkux right now, is that he is going to scale nicely into the mid game. That's something that you have to respect if you're Splyce, because, or if you're Unicorn, sorry, because they actually rely a little bit more on scaling. You want to, if you're Varus, likely to go towards the heavy penetration build, largely because of the buff to lethality that we saw in this patch, which means that you're going to see the Edge of Night or Ghost Blade into Edge of Night build. Meanwhile, the Katarina is likely going to rush that Gunblade, which is also nerfed in the early game, which means that her spike isn't quite as strong. Doesn't mean she's afraid to go in aggressively, though.
Yeah. She got a little bit nerfed as well, too. A little less damage, a little less to do on the Shunpo, but still, Exile has had a solid start to this one. And let's take a look, checking in with how much he's been able to push Senkux back. It's not a huge CS differential because he's hurt of that massive minion wave. It should equalize.
But also look at Exile. Just look at his positioning, right? Whenever he sees an opportunity, he's moving down to the bottom half of the map where there's a lot of vision. You can see that the bottom lane of Splyce are actually a little bit overextended. They need to be very aware of the potential roam from Exile. And the moment Samex hits level 6, there's actually a lot of kill threat for Exile down the bottom lane.
Absolutely. Mickey, Kabi pushing pretty deep here, but they could be in a lot of trouble if Exile ends up taking that trip. But they have put a couple of advance wards through the river. You can see the vision priority. But Unicorns really have controlled most of this river, and it's going to allow them to take a lot more pass through it without Splyce really being the wiser.
And given that we are looking at there's a lot of interesting things to look at. But right now we need to be talking about this movement from Splyce's bottom lane, because one thing we haven't mentioned is this Shen. We've had so many interesting things going on, but the great thing about Shen is that once he hits that level 6, level 7 mark, you can look to make the play down bottom. You can look to get a dive, you can use his Shen ultimate to just join the fray. You have a Warwick ulti too. There are a lot of things you have to be careful of. So one of the things that we've been seeing from a lot of teams is making this map movement up to the top lane.
Yeah, they're going to force the response out of Samex and Hylissang. They're already backing away right now. Trashy's going to be heading up here, so I mean, in essence, this is something we haven't seen for a long, long time. It's a swap. It's just way later.
Well, no, this was something that Fnatic actually brought out in their first game against G2.
Oh, that's right, that's right.
So they were able to move up to the top side, and it's just a common thing that we're seeing more often against Shen in particular. It's to deny that level 6 spike that he has, where he can look to make that ultimate play across the map, and he'd still have his teleport afterwards. And it could very well result in the first tower for Splyce, depending on how quickly Unicorns can respond.
That's a party up top. Senkux is going to send a Frost Bomb, spotting Exile. Another rocket as well. Thunderlord's proc dishes some damage. Meet up with Xerxes and head right back to mid. A lot of damage on that tower, and Unicorns were a bit slow to respond. So this is something that Splyce are looking to do to try to get edges on the Unicorns and slow down some of their powerful scaling.
But now they can look to make that cross-map play top, because Splyce were not able to get the tower down fast enough. They got a lot of chunk damage onto it, but now they're in the same dangerous position they were in not too long ago, where you can look to use the Shen ultimate to set up a dive top. You can have the Warwick be that initiator. There are just a lot of risks that Splyce need to be very aware of.
Yeah. Speaking of the Warwick, at level 7, his access to his ultimate has had for a little while now. Curious to see where he ends up shifting his attention. Obviously for Unicorns, it has been all about these fights, but Xerxes did assist in that first blood. See what happens. And taking a look at Senkux, I mean, it really does speak so much to the story of week 1 and week 2.
Certainly
How much
does.
a lot of it was on him.
To be fair, in this game, it's not entirely his fault.
No,
because
this is a little
did
different.
give away that double buff, which makes it so much easier for Cat to be aggressive in the lane. It just enables Katarina to do exactly what Katarina does. And one of my big question marks is how well Unicorns of Love can actually snowball this lead now, because typically they haven't been a team that have been able to, off of an early lead, just quickly transition it into, oh my god, a massive turnaround. Where they get their big gold advantages and where they make headway in the game is around the 20 to 25 minute mark, once you hit that mid-game point where you start to see these team fights begin to happen.
Well, I definitely have to keep an eye on when that starts to happen. For Splyce's side, just continuing to try and push up in the top. Down in CS versus Samex and Hylissang, but again, there's all that pressure they had on the tower. Now Wonder is going to get taunted up by Chachi, and in comes Warwick. Xerxes, he's going to hop, there's a flash, he's going to jump on him, infinite duress. He's going nowhere, but he lays down the red carpet just a skosh too late, and Chachi takes him down.
Really good use of the Q from Xerxes to actually close the gap and force the flash out of Wonder. That was really innovative, really smart play from Xerxes, and I love that gank down in the bottom lane. Unicorns of Love do lose their tower up in the top lane, and I actually don't know if Unicorns can get much other than the dragon off the back of that play.
Well, it is a Mountain Drake, so it is quite valuable if they can secure it right now, but with the difference in the towers taken, that almost equalized the gold. It's sitting within a few hundred in favor of Unicorns, who just have those 2 kills to compensate for the lost tower. should be able to pick this one up. Not a whole lot of damage, but they do have a Shen to tank right now. With control of the river, there's really no reaction that Splyce can throw. Trashy has just backed away, so he's not going to be able to stop this as he picks himself up a couple of control wards. A very heavy investment on the side of Splyce for that particular item.
So now you can see Splyce. Oh, here we are. This is the replay that I wanted to just... You can see that if you pop the W on Xerxes, you get this bonus movement speed, you can close the gap. And look at that, he uses the Q on the minion to close the gap. That's when Wonder flashes because he thinks that's the ulti, and then Xerxes still has his ulti up available to land the secure. So really, honestly, really smart play, and already a good example of the different things you can do with the Warwick.
And it's definitely allowed Xerxes to kind of speed things up just a little bit for this Unicorn squad, even though most of the action happened in just small bursts there. He's been involved in every aspect of it. So now the duo laners take their places down once again in the bottom side as we are just a little further than 12 minutes into this game. There will be another Mountain Dragon spawning. Unicorns, if they can secure that one, will get themselves a whole lot of damage to structures. Kabi and Mickey continuing to push down in this bottom side, and there's no Kha'Zix in sight just yet.
Well, a lot of that is because of the early deficit that Trashy put himself into. Held onto his flash, took the wrong path, ended up getting punished for it, and so far, I mean, the problem for Kha'Zix in this setup, excuse me, is that he actually didn't have a huge number of options to gank, right? Because when you look at the bottom lane, Jhin Karma, the best that you could get in terms of a setup is you land a Karma Q into the Jhin W, and then the Rumble doesn't actually have that much hard CC either. So you kind of need someone from the Unicorns of Love to overextend. And they were very aware of the possibility of Trashy going for these early ganks, and so they played around it accurately. I think that the Unicorns of Love compensated for the early aggression from Trashy, and they've done a lot to mitigate that.
Yeah, I think that's definitely fair. But, I mean, when you're playing somebody like Kha'Zix, I'm just hearing from our statistics that he's not done any damage in the 12 minutes, 13 minutes he's been up in this game. And Trashy, he's the very experienced jungler. He's the guy that said last week on the desk, I think I can deal with Xerxes. I think I can shut him down because he reminds me a lot of me when I had less experience. I mean, you don't really have so much experience with the Warwick, but this is something that you've got to be careful for. Trashy's been criticized for not so much heavy pressure. Here's the roam now for Exile. Xerxes, they're bringing everyone as Chachi stand united on. They dispatch Mickey immediately, and Kabi stuck under tower. It's a quick double kill for Exile, and the rest of Unicorns can make short work of this tower.
Very clean map movement from the Unicorns of Love. You can see they had set up vision in the bottom half of Splyce's jungle. Exile had gotten the push. He has priority over this Corki because right now he has no magic resistance. Every time Exile goes in for a trade, he gets pushed back. That enabled Exile to make the map movement, but he moves with Xerxes. They take advantage of the blast cone to avoid all the vision, and then Splyce just can't do anything with the Shen ultimate on top. It is such a clean and easy dive, and 2 more kills onto that Katarina is going to be so much problem. So much problem? Such a problem.
Such problems, yeah. Oh boy. Okay, so Exile's getting chunked a little bit, but they're running fast out of minions. Not only that, Wonder used his TP, had to cancel it immediately. I mean, the decision-making definitely seems to not be quite as crisp as what the Unicorns are throwing out there. So they've been able to equalize on towers and put their gold lead back where, you know, it was earlier.
So one of the criticisms that we had for the Unicorns of Love in their game, or in their series against H2K, was actually they spent a lot of time just grouping up mid. They kept trying to force fights, they kept trying to make plays happen, and fortunately for them, they got a lot of these plays thanks to the way in which he was, Hylissang was able to set up the fights. But in terms of the actual team fight, like, I'm looking forward to seeing now whether or not Unicorns of Love can set up properly on side lanes and use this 1-3-1 that they've set up nicely for themselves.
Yeah, I think that's definitely something we have to see them do a little bit more of. And for Splyce, I mean, their game plan definitely has to be not letting Unicorns get the jump on them like that. And again, lingering questions. When you talk about these 2 junglers like we just saw, Xerxes, a lot less experience here in the LCS, but he has had a bigger impact than Trashy has so far.
I mean, he certainly has. Xerxes, not typically known for being that early aggressive jungler, playing more towards scaling. And to be fair to him, he did get a really good start at level 3. Kha'Zix
can't get much better, to be honest.
Yeah. And then he was just unable to power farm. I want to keep track of the build that the Warwick has because a lot of people are curious as to the way that you do build it. I've seen a lot of variation like Wit's End, Frozen Mallet, Trinity Force Rush. And from the junglers that I've spoken to, tanky is the better way to go, but you often still get a Tiamat just to help you with your wave clear, because, or your jungle clear, sorry, given that he is very single target and it just helps you with your clear speed.
Well, Xerxes is definitely doing what you expected him to with the Cinder Hulk enchantment, of course, and the Tiamat. Let's see if it ends up being useful when he starts pushing down those sideways. Splyce investing a lot of vision inside of their own jungle, but Unicorns were hiding out in the brush just south of mid lane. Exile heading down towards bottom side, and you can see the Unicorns are fanning out a little bit. They can secure that tower up top, start to break this map open. Where does Splyce go from there?
Well, if you're Splyce right now, what you really don't want to do is fight. Like, you are reaching like your mid-game spikes because you got Leandries on the Rumble, you have the Trinity Force on Corki, and you also are working towards your second core item on Kobe, right? So far things are okay. They're not at such a massive deficit that they're going to fall behind, but given how fed this Katarina is, and given how strong the war is as well, I think you have to be very careful at trying to force these fights. So I think you just buy time, you wait a little bit longer, and you just mainly try to set up around this next Drake that's spawning in 20 seconds.
Yeah, you can't really afford to be giving this over to Unicorns, especially when you have something like that fed Katarina, the Warwick still causing a lot of havoc. It'll be coming up in the next 15, but Splyce are already moving towards mid. However, they've spooked Samix and Hylissang. They're backing away. A lot of Unicorns' vision in this bottom side of the map, and not only that, inside the jungle, they should spot Senkooks coming up. Splyce just sniffing around. Xerxes might be able to solo this, though.
Well, Splyce decided that they didn't want to try and contest the Dragon, because you can see they've actually invested a lot of vision into the top side. Perhaps they want to look to play towards the Shen to prevent him from making some kind of map movement. But this has enabled Unicorns to just easily rotate down to the Drake and pick this one up for free. So yeah, Splyce just avoiding that fight for the time being. And the big problem for them is, I'm not sure at what point for now they're really going to be able to snowball, because their late game is definitely decent. Their late game team fighting is very powerful. They have a lot of poke. Their siege is very good. But when you just look at how well the Katarina scales into the late game, how you have these two big tanks in the form of Shen and Warwick, and the amount of crowd control that they can throw out, the amount of single target peel that they have with the Lulu, like, I feel like the Unicorns actually have a great way to just abuse the fact that Splyce is pretty weak right now.
And they keep doing it. However, they are in danger of getting caught. Ghost Blades popped. Hylissang, they open up on him with the curtain call, and in comes Trashy. Trashy, though, has already come on in, and he just in time arrives. However, Hylissang is going to be the first casualty of the fight. Exile going to have to flash and hop and skip and jump away. Back to Samix he goes. Let's see if Unicorns can equalize this. Flourish is caught, avoiding the bombs. Mickey trying to send a Q flying, but Chachi is going to give his life to keep his mid laner alive. It is a 2-for-0, and Unicorns, they're still on the retreat path.
Fantastic collapse coming out from Splyce, and it is Hylissang that ends up getting caught out of position. I cannot give enough praise to Wonder for that beautiful Rumble ultimate, landing onto 4 members of the Unicorn, forcing them to retreat and forcing them into a situation where they just could not answer.
See if Splyce is able to finish off this turret in the mid, and it's exactly what the desk was criticizing Hylissang for before the start of this match. Very aggressive positioning, and they have a lot of confidence on the Unicorn side, but he just steps too far forward too many times.
They just don't respect the potential collapse coming out from the Splyce lineup. Look at this beautiful flank from the Rumble. The infinite duress is used onto him, but you've now left Exile on his own to try and 1 versus 4. And yes, this Katarina is strong, but he is not strong enough. And this was a problem for the Unicorns last week. This is a problem that we saw for them against H2K, where they just kept grouping up mid and kept trying to force fight. You have an extremely strong Cat. Send her off into the side lane. Senkooks can't 1v1 her. Wonder can't 1v1 her. Who's going to be able to deal with it? You also have Chachi up in the top lane. You still have your tier 1 in the mid, so you can just slowly push that out. You can play the map better. You can split and divide Splyce, and you can use your gold advantage, and Unicorns just didn't do it, and they end up getting punished.
And Splyce have to be pretty happy with how things have shaken out. They pulled the gold within 1,000 at 20 minutes now. And even though they were only able to secure 2 kills, it looked like it was going to be more for a minute. You know, they push Unicorns back, make them question themselves, and if they keep funneling down this mid lane, like you've got 3 of them here now, well, things could keep on turning. Even though you've got a pair of Drakes and such a great start that Unicorns got, that can all evaporate in the blink of an eye as Chachi and Wonder are duking it out on the bottom side. Chachi's getting the better of this right now, but he's about to get some help. There we go, jumped on, Wonder, oh, the taunt lands, and Chachi, he's got a flash, but he's going for the kill. He takes down Wonder, but Trashy gets a kill for himself.
So they end up trading 1-for-1 in the bottom, but the advantage for the Unicorns is that this time they had 4 members in the mid lane, and they were able to take advantage of the fact that it was 4 versus 2. Senkooks was up in the top lane, and because they ended up trading 1-for-1, Unicorns do end up coming out overall. So now they've gained a lot more control over the map, and they may look to punish Mickey now.
All right, out of the brushes. comes the entire Unicorn squad. Senkux and Mickey are having none of it as the wave is cleared. Once again, Unicorns gonna head up towards the darkness of the Baron Pit. A little early to try and start this one, but they are going to go for it all the same.
They're just going to try and rush this. The damage is reasonable.
That's a lot.
Splyce have pinged it out. Here comes the TP.
Oh boy, teleport coming in for Vizichachi. Baron already down to half health, but look at Trashy. He's on the other side of the map. He couldn't smite steal. However, Samix takes a lot of damage. The last fall, a curtain call. That's a lot now, and they're trapped between Splyce members left and right. Samix has got a Shen shield on, but he's going down before it can even finish. Now they're chasing Splyce all the way through the Unicorn squad, and they pull the trigger just too soon. Trashy looking to finish them off, and now Wonder will take down Hillisang, and it's looking a lot like that last fight up mid, Vedius.
I do not understand what the Unicorns are trying to force right now. There is no need to make a Baron play at 20 minutes into the game. Yes, you have vision control over it. What are you expecting to happen against a Rumble and a Corki with package? Unicorns want to try and stop it, but let's see if Splyce can get the Baron.
Looks like we had it before. Splyce are going to try and secure the Baron. Oh! It's stolen away by Xerxes, and now the fight is going nuts, but the rest of the Unicorns are dropping. Samix doesn't even get involved in this. I don't know why I was talking about him. Kavi picks himself up a double. Baron is stolen. That was all kinds of messy.
This was exactly the same mistakes from both teams in the previous weeks. Unicorns of Love tried to force a Baron. Yes, again, you have vision, but look at your bot lane. It's knocking on the doors of the tower. They have the 1-3-1, and instead they're trying to force a fight against the package of Corki that just shreds through the lineup. Then you have Wonder coming in as well from the backside. You end up getting collapsed on from 2 angles without even being able to engage the fight. So this looks great for Splyce. Now they decide, let's try and go for Baron, okay? Now, this play can work out if they turn. If they turn onto the Warwick, if they disengage from the Baron and they just kill a few more members, this can work out. They decide to commit, they go for the 50-50. Look at Katarina on the flank, look at Cersei in the middle. He's not being targeted at all. Trashy ends up getting locked up by the taunt, and Exile's just free to do as he please. I think it was a bit of a misplay from Exile actually diving straight into the middle of the Baron pit. He could have killed off Mickey, got more resets. But nevertheless, the fact that Splyce go for the 50-50 exactly like they did against Vitality, it's just, honestly, it's a mistake from one side to then mistake from the other.
Yeah, that was bizarre, to say the least. And now we stand at 8-7 in kills, and the gold game is incredibly close. It's 1,000 in favor of the Unicorns. There is another Mountain Drake, though, Vedius, and Unicorns are eyeballing it. Let's see if they can take this one out real quick. Like Trashy, not super close to respond. He's actually around the back of the pit, never mind. But they pulled it outside of this, and they should have enough damage to finish this one off. Will Trashy try to hop in? Not enough time to do it. It's secured. Unicorns take themselves a 3rd Mountain Drake in this game.
No need to make the risky play onto that. You have your mid lane and top lane if you're Splyce. And now Cersei.
Oh, they jumped onto Trashy right now. They hop in. He's going to flash himself away. 007, and he definitely got out. A few scratches, though.
You're also now starting to see the pick potential from Unicorn's composition, the stacking chains you see that they have with the Warwick ultimate, the Shen ultimate. I think the Shen ultimate was just a little bit too slow. If they landed that taunt, it would have been a kill. Nevertheless, they do end up getting the flash out of Trashy, which is going to make things difficult for him to dive onto the backline in these fights. And he's not going to have that escape for later.
Yeah, so Splyce, they are the ones who are grouping up in the mid now to try and finally polish off this turret. Remember, it has been 2-1 in turrets, but look at the bottom. You now have Exile doing the split push. He's spotted by a ward, though.
But this is what they should have been doing 10 minutes ago. This is the sort of setup that they should have been trying to do rather than trying to make a Baron play.
When they had a big lead, yeah.
Exactly. You know, like, they were in such a great spot where the Corki really couldn't trade against the Katarina. And they just didn't take advantage of it. Instead, they tried to force fights, and they ended up failing. Now that they've lost 2 fights, they go, hey, why don't we play 1-3-1, and let's try and utilize this composition that we have.
Yeah, we've got a 2.5 item Katarina. Let's do that.
But they're still not so far. I mean, they're ahead, right? So they can still make this play happen. It's still possible. It's just, given the difference earlier on, it's not going to be as easy to take advantage of.
And the map control just hasn't been the same for a little while, too. I mean, you can see where the vision is right now. Most of the Unicorns is stretched a little bit thin. They are still grouping up quite heavily in the mid. They are the ones doing the 1-3-1 at the minute, but Splyce have been able to respond. And like we talked about, they're scaling. This is about the time in the game, maybe a little bit later, and it will change, but this is where they're powerful, and the Unicorns don't seem to have all the answers.
Well, personally, I think that right now, if you're Unicorns, you actually send the Shen bot, you put the Katarina top, and then you invest a lot of your vision into the top half of the jungle so that you can then easily rotate around and take that top tower. Because as you can see, they're actually spending a lot of time in the bottom half as Hylissang getting caught out.
We've seen that one before, but this time he's got Xerxes at the back, and the Chain of Corruption lands onto Mickey X. There's the red carpet from Wonder, and Xerxes is going to have to speed out of there, but the curtain call's opened up for Kabi, and he's got 1 on Samix, 2 on Hylissang, 3 on Chachi, and they're just going to melt through the rest, but Exile in the back cleans them up. It's a 2 for 2 in favor of Unicorns. We're not done yet. Exile's isolated, and Trashy is going to taste his fear.
Unicorns tried to make a response to Hylissang getting caught out in the mid lane. They tried to go for the 5 versus 5 fight, but again, you're seeing the team fight power of this Splyce composition. The package from Corki, the Rumble ultimate, the peel that Karma can provide, and then Trashy just cleaning things up is making it so difficult for the Unicorns to come out ahead in any situation. We questioned whether or not the Unicorns would be able to play this 1-3-1, and so far they are not demonstrating their ability. So you can see here, Hylissang takes a bit of aggression. Unicorns try this as an opportunity to go for a play. Mickey is acting as bait. He's even able to get out. And before Chachi can even join the fray, they have to disengage. They still decide to commit because they feel they want to try and get something back. But honestly, it's just a little bit too late at this point. And by the time Exile joins the fight, this is why we were talking about playing towards the Katarina, sending the Katarina top, because if you're playing the 1-3-1, you typically want to play near your strong side of the map. Away from your global, because it's very easy for them to join the fight. If they were playing closer to the Katarina, it would have been easier for them to then set up that play. But honestly, like, I'm gobsmacked as to how back and forth this game is, largely just because of the ridiculous mistakes of both these teams today.
Well, we thought it could definitely be a little close, and it certainly has been. Splyce, they hadn't been properly tested just yet, but a lot of mistakes from both sides, as you said. And another one from Chachi, finds himself in 3 members, nearly takes Wonder down with him. But Trashy, how about that? From the buff transfer start to 5-2 on the game.
Honestly, really good way to turn it around. It does help when the enemy team tries to force a Baron at 20 minutes.
Yeah, that was still bewildering. Exile's going to get himself a tower up top, but I mean, it's 3-3. They've matched. Splyce actually have a gold lead here, and they're on to the tier 2 in bottom.
Well, look at the difference now from Splyce. Trashy is hanging around the top side. He's staying with Senkux, and he's getting a lot of vision, forcing Unicorns to take the long, arduous path towards the bottom lane, and this results in them giving up the tower.
They get another, and Trashy's able to leap to freedom. All of a sudden, Splyce, I mean, they've turned these tables. We're almost 30 minutes into this game. There's an Infernal Dragon on the map in a minute and a half, and the Baron will be alive in 30 seconds again. I mean, there's a lot of juicy objectives if they can throw their weight to them.
It certainly is. I mean, the Infernal Drake is definitely something that Splyce want to get for themselves. And Unicorns, once again, grouping up mid. Very risky.
Oh, they flash. Oh, Exile, he's going to be able to finish Wonder, or is he? He does, and he goes golden in style at the end, but the curtain call has opened up. Hylissang and Xerxes are going to be caught by an Exile around the side with Chachi, trying to make something happen. Splyce are looking to re-engage, but maybe they've stepped too far. Chachi's here, full health available. Taunt gets flashed away, and he's stopped up by the W from Jin. In goes Xerxes, on to Kabi, not enough damage. Exile gets blown up by Senkux. Oh my goodness, right now Xerxes trying to finish it, but way too many Splyce members on the back end. Chachi's gonna get caught one more time. Unicorns commit just way too hard.
Really good exhaust from Mickey, reading the plan from Exile to try and dive in from the original initiation from Chachi and try and snowball that fight. But the exhaust is always there, ready and waiting. Honestly, Splyce are just playing these fights so beautifully well. The Unicorns have been praised for their team fighting prowess, but it is Splyce that are constantly coming out ahead. Now this is Exile trying to get a pick onto Wonder. They felt like they caught him out of position. This is good. And at this point, you just need to disengage. Baron is going to be spawning soon. Dragon is going to be spawning soon. But because of a really good ultimate from Kobe slowing down the chase, they feel that Splyce have overcommitted. Unicorns go for the re-engage, and this is where they overcommit. You should have disengaged a long time ago. Diving underneath the turret, instantly exhausted onto Exile. We don't have time for that because now Splyce have gone for the Baron.
There is yet another Baron, and Xerxes is nowhere in sight right now. Hylissang just sends it.
What?
No way!
Kidding me? Hylissang just stole the Baron!
What a god of a glitter lance!
Oh.
And Unicorns fans go nuts with that Baron steal. I've seen a lot of crazy ones, but that might just take it.
What is this game, Pyra? I don't understand. Lulu stealing away a Baron. Splyce had that one for sure. Trashy still has his smite up. That wasn't even 50-50. There was nothing wrong with that play. He just missed his smite.
Oh my goodness. Unicorns are going to get a chance to grab themselves the Infernal Drake off this. I mean, they're not back in the driver's seat yet, but man, it can't get better than that.
So we have to watch exactly what happens here, because there's only Hylissang there. The jungler's nowhere near. I don't even know. He had Smite up. He used the Q like I don't know.
Did they not? I mean, they didn't have vision, and Trashy knows. Oh, should have pressed D.
He done goofed.
Man, so Hylissang has got his team able to march back in. Still, as we said, a lot of mistakes this game. It has been the name of it, but when both teams commit these crucial errors, you end up getting them smacking each other in the head over and over again, and we're dead even almost on gold at 32 minutes.
Oh, man.
Take a breather if you need it.
Honestly,
Strap in, it's going to be a long one.
Yeah, because now that the Baron is in Unicorn's favor, it's so much easier for them to play this 1-3-1 again. You just have to play safe if your Unicorn's in the mid. You send Exile to the bot lane. You gain vision control over the bottom half of the jungle. You play towards the strong side. You keep Shen up top, drawing pressure. And then you can just slowly work your way through these towers. But Unicorns are grouping up again. They're just going to rotate towards the Shen. This isn't a terrible move because you can see the rumbles down. But it should result in a tower for the Unicorns.
Yeah, there's a teleport available for Wonder right now, but it's how much is Splyce able to react, how quick is Splyce able to react on the fly, and you can see that they've kind of joined the fray here up top, but Chachi's just tanking through it, and they shred the tower. 3 Mountain Drakes will really do that for you. Splyce just can't respond fast enough.
So now, 33 minutes into the game, Unicorns will have a very slight gold advantage, and there are no real objectives left for them to take. Like, Dragon isn't going to be spawning for a while. Baron is obviously off the table. So now Unicorns just want to try and siege onto these tier 2s. I think if you're Unicorns right now, you just move the Shen into the bottom lane. You can group up as 3 in the mid, and you can just keep rotating between mid, bot, mid, bot, mid, bot, right? Yep. You can set up this 1-3-1 again. I don't feel like this entirely necessary, unless you look to try and force a dive with the Shen. It's very risky because of the double exhaust, but I feel like right now you should just keep rotating between bot and mid, bot and mid, bot and mid, and just slowly gaining more and more control over this jungle.
Conversely, how does Splyce stop this right now? Do they need to just wait out the Baron buff and try to push the minion waves off before they can finish the towers?
I mean, like, they have good wave pierce. You typically just want the Corki in whatever lane has the greatest risk of taking the tower damage, right? So you just want to try and move him in a way that enables him to clear as much of this as possible, but it's very difficult when you're 280 carries going up against Baron and Pad.
Yeah. I do think it's worth giving some credit, though, to Senkux this game. He's definitely had a very impactful game, even compared to what we saw from him in week number 2, where it was just much improved over 1. He hasn't died this game either. I mean, he's been saying, that's a feat against a Warwick and a Katarina comp.
Yeah, it certainly is. You have to be very aware, but it's also, you have to remember that Corki is generally a pretty safe champion, that he has a lot of escapes too. But nevertheless, right now, Unicorns are able to get themselves to tier 2 in the bottom lane. You can see now Wonder's very scared of this Katarina. 4 item builds. And I mean, builds are not actually something we've talked a lot about, but something I do want to mention is the fact that now you're starting to see more Duskblade of Drakthar.
Yep.
A lot of this is due to the lethality changes. You're seeing these full lethality builds, which is why we've seen the Varus and the Jhin being the priority. And it's now reintroduced this. There was an ever so slight buff to one of the passives that you have, Night Stalker on top of the Duskblade, which means that now you do a little bit more damage. And on top of that, when you stack that with the lethality buffs, it's actually a pretty powerful buy that enables these full penetration 80 carries to work out.
And in terms of keeping them a little bit safer too, I mean, the active that you have on Edge of Night has also received a buff, and its cooldown is lower. So you can have that spell shield up a little bit more often, you know, prevent some of those effects. And, well, if you're an AD carry, you have to be pretty happy about that one. And, you know, Kabi has definitely had some pretty big impact this game. I mean, Samix has been a lot more utility-based. We've seen him setting up the Chains of Corruption. But it is interesting that Splyce seemed to have drafted, you know, the more team-fighting comp, where Unicorns, well, they've been team-fighting, but, I mean, this really is built to do the 1-3-1.
And so far, they're doing a fine job of it. You can see Exile just rotating up to try and assist where he can, but he gets locked up.
Oh, Chains. Okay, he's going to be able to Shunpo over. Xerxes was there for him. So Unicorns this time, they're flirting with it, the danger, but they are not stepping themselves too far forward. The curtain call comes out, as does the equalizer. Hylissang is isolated from the team, and he jumps. He's going to have to flash away, and Kabi finishes him off with a little help from Trashy. But meanwhile, Vizichachi is on top turret.
A lot of ultimates have been used from the side of Splyce, which could mean a tower for the Unicorns of Love. He's going to teleport away. Nice response. So they end up trading a kill.
Oh no! Chachi gets stopped, and now he's all by himself. He can't get anything done, except maybe try to take out Senkux. Okay, he's gone down. There's the Guardian Angel pop, but meanwhile, look at what Unicorns are going to be doing. Taking the incentive to push down mid and top while Chachi's buying time.
But they're not going to be able to get it. So 2 Unicorns members end up dropping, which will enable Splyce to just buy more time, because that's what they really need. With 2 members down, the Elder Drake is not going to be a priority for the Unicorns. They can get some vision around it, but it's also enabling Splyce to move in and contest some of that vision. They can reclaim some control and then make that the big objective that they want to try and fight for.
Yeah, it gives them some breathing room right now. And you know, Baron's going to hit the Rift. As you mentioned, Elder Dragon will hit the Rift as well. And it's 37 minutes into this game. If Splyce can win a big team fight, they can still take it. I mean, up until the Baron, they were doing pretty solid.
I mean, what either team really doing solid this game, Byron?
I suppose you have to take it with a grain of salt. I mean, comparatively solid, but you are right. There is a lot to criticize, and that's when you get games that swing like that.
Yep. It's been very up and down, largely because whenever UOL have had a lead, they've kind of thrown it away. They've been not playing to their composition as efficiently as they could have been. But now we have to backtrack a little bit, because after that play that just happened, Unicorns lost 2 members, Splyce have regained control over the Elder, and UOL want to stop them.
Yes, they do. It's down to half its health right now. We'll see. Exile is going to be getting the shield on him, and in goes the Warwick jump. Mickey's not taken out. He was the bait once again. Xerxes trying to finish off Chachi, but the curtain call opened up by Kabi right now. Mickey's taking out Xerxes. Exile, he's way too low. He's surrounded by Splyce members. Hellissang's jumped on. Unicorns have lost everything in this fight. It's just Chachi, and he's getting barbecued down to 0. That's the ace for Splyce.
Splyce come away with the team fight win. 5 members for 0. They will pick up this Elder Dragon. You can see the look of joy on Wonder's face, as now they can move to the Baron and look to knock on the doors of the Unicorns Nexus.
Well, you can't steal a Baron away if you're dead, so Splyce is pretty safe to try it this time. One big fight is what's getting it through them, or getting them through this right now, as they have a slim gold lead, but there are still long death timers awaiting Unicorns. All those Barons, all that control, all that 1-3-1-ing undone in the blink of an eye, as Splyce are going to set their sights on the base of Unicorns with all the objectives in their pocket.
So Splyce right now, finally in a good position to move forward. But let's have a look at how this fight all kicks off. Shenol used very early onto Exile, I feel, to try and dive into the backline. The exhaust gets used on him, and he comes for a flank, and he actually isn't able to do anything. And at this point, Xerxes has already been taken out. Senkux is able to dive onto the backline and clear out the AD carry. And honestly, it's just really good positioning and target focus from Splyce, because they realize that the cat goes in first, they lock her down, force her out. Xerxes then comes in alone, they lock him down and chunk him out. And the Varus, with this full penetration build, is more about poke and playing around these objectives with more like time base and relying on the cat to deal the majority of the damage. And if she's forced out early, then the Unicorns lose all of this damage. And Splyce is definitely not a comp that's lacking in terms of damage.
No kidding. I mean, they don't need any Mountain Drakes to shred through those towers like butter right now. Unicorns desperately trying to hang tough, but it's going to be hard. The curtain call's open. Chachi's tanking once again. There's another equalizer. They throw down the redemption, but they may not live through this one, as Xerxes going to hop up and away, and all of a sudden the base is broken open. 40 minutes. Splyce are looking to try and close this one out. They just need to keep rotating around. Hylissang, Samix, and Exile all sniffing for something, but nothing to be found.
So being able to pick up the first inhibitor of the game is a big deal for Splyce. The Elder Dragon is likely to wear off by the time they set up for the next siege, but now they can just move the Rumble into the side lane. They can move Corki to a side lane too. Depends whether or not he has actually picked himself up the package. Nevertheless, you can just set up the 1-3-1 using the super minions now as the actual knock-in door. So you have the 1-4, and it's going to be very difficult now for UOL to engage in these fights, largely because I think Splyce have just figured out how to team fight. You force Exile out of these fights. Samix just doesn't really output enough damage in an extended fight to really swing it in Unicorn's favor. So the only one they really have to play around is the cat, and as long as they do that, Splyce should consistently come out ahead.
Well, they found a way to do it. From 6-2 to 6-4, Exile has not been able to get that much going in the later stages of this game for himself. 21 kills to 10, and that really just spells out the latter half of this game for the Splyce team. I mean, a lot of credit has to go Senkuk's way, I think. He's still not died, and he was going full Mad Bomber in the back there in that last fight that really enabled them to swing the gold once again in their favor, but has this ever been a game to give you heart attacks? That's for sure. Samix takes one shot, Chachi tanks another, Xerxes with the third, but all they really want is to get this tower. Splyce are going to be able to do it.
Yep. Clean take of the tower, and Splyce can just keep repeating this combo. You throw the Rumble ultimate down to force the Unicorns away from the objective, and if they stick around, they just reposition, then you have the Jhin ultimate and the Corki poke to just constantly force the Unicorns back. Really like the way in which they're setting up these sieges, and honestly, it should just be a matter of time for Splyce now, unless the Unicorns can set up a very clean flank. All you need is this Katarina to be in a good position where she's not exhausted, and somehow getting onto the backline, because all of these members are super squishy this late into the game, and it is super easy for Kat to just clean these fights up if she's just given the opportunity to do so.
Yeah, we talked about all the way back in the pick and ban phase, this is the weakness of Splyce. They have very squishy members that Exile can blow up, but he's had a harder and harder time doing it because, as you mentioned, Splyce have just found a way to team fight and kind of outfox this Unicorn squad. You know, they said last week they just weren't really afraid of them. Senkux in an interview was just stating, hey, I think Unicorns are a good team, but they still haven't quite adapted to to themselves, to what their playstyle finally is going to be, and said pretty confidently, I think we can beat them.
Well, the Unicorns are a good team. You know, I mean, they're 3-0 in the group. You can't be that high if you're not a strong team. And I think the respect is well deserved. But you really start to see that their playstyle seems to be very linear. They are very much about team fighting, and even if they have other options available, they tend not to take advantage of them, and sometimes it causes a big detriment.
Case in point, this time around, Splyce open up yet another curtain call. Xerxes is tanking on this one. Chachi looking to come around this side, see if he can flank, but he's spotted out. Curtain call is going to end, and they've run short on minions for now, but they can just buy some time, keep waiting. There's a big wave pushing up top. Unicorns are going to have to respond to it.
But now the ultimates are actually down for Kobbe. There's still Wonder's ulti available. Cat is being forced to set up to a side lane to deal with that pressure, and Splyce are just continuously throwing out the poke.
Yep. Xerxes coming up, but they have to keep sending people up towards the top to deal with that minion wave. Chachi is there. Now they're all going to be there. And it looks like the rest of Splyce are opting instead to go the path of least resistance, getting some vision in the jungle and sending Wonder down towards the bottom to clean up these minions as well. Unicorns are running short of options as their base continues to be pressured.
Slowly but surely is the name of the game for Splyce. They don't need to force anything. They just use their poke, use their simple harass to slowly edge the Unicorns away. And with the Baron spawning in about 2 minutes, all Splyce need to do is just keep playing around bot, keep playing around mid, just maintain an extended vision line, and just slowly work on these towers until that objective is available.
Oh, Illisang steps forward, takes a lot more damage before he can get anything else done. Equalizer thrown down onto Samix in Exile. They dodge one more curtain call shot, but it may not matter. This tower is just being cut through. Unicorns have yet another hole in their base to deal with. Trying to plug the one up in the top with Chachi meant they weren't able to respond in time. Xerxes looking to go in. He's got the Shen Shield. He leaps, but Kobbe is going to flash away from it. Here comes Chachi. He lands a big taunt. They've got the Wild Growth, but is it going to be enough to keep him alive? Chain of Corruption onto Trashy here. Can they get it done? Exile, that's a lot of damage. Wonder's going to go golden as Mickey's taunted up. Kobbe takes down Exile. The Unicorns are starting to fall to pieces. Chachi holding out to the last, but at the end, he will be the last man standing, and that won't be for very long. Splyce lose one, and they're aiming for base.
The Unicorns realize that their backs are against the wall. They have to force the fight, and it is just too late into the game for them to do that. Splyce get the clean team fight win, and they're likely going to take game 1 of this best of 3.
Who needs minions? They start on it anyways at 45.5 minutes. This game has been post-pounding from the get-go. 26 kills to Splyce, not a single death on Senkux, and they've looked good. Just at the end, they fire the shot and take down the Nexus.
Interesting game, I feel.
To say the least.
To say the least. A lot of mistakes from both sides. Unicorns kicked off to a fantastic start. You could not have asked for a better way. You've got a snowball on your Katarina, your Warwick is already putting a lot of pressure on the map. The Kha'Zix hasn't been able to snowball any of his powerful lanes. You can easily set up for the 1-3-1 and you don't do it. And then Splyce, they're in a good position. They throw a Baron, like so back and forth.
Yeah, it was utterly ridiculous. But at the end of the day, Splyce, they get the win in game number 1. They've taken this first game. We're going to hand it off to the analyst desk to try their best to break down how it happened.
Thank you so much, Pyro. And of course, we're going to weave in what you guys talked about at the beginning of the day. And I want to start with something that you guys pointed out as a positive. Now, we don't know if Warwick is meta in the pro scene because this is the first time he was available in the UOL but it is one of those things that you mentioned, the Unicorns of Love. They're not afraid to go for something unique, or they're not afraid to take a risk and pick some bans.
Yeah, and the jungler Xerxes is definitely not afraid to pull out new things. And he instant locked it when he saw it was against Kha'Zix, clearly planned by the Unicorns of Love. That being said, like, despite it getting a really good start, other picks could actually been probably more valuable in the jungle for later team fights, but he got the snowball going, and that's the key thing.
It helped their early game, so
yes.
I mean, damned if you do, damned if you don't, right? We wanted them to fix their early game, and they did with a beautiful opener here. Small thing to note, he got the Blood Scent because Karma was low in the bot lane, which means he got 1 or 2 seconds faster in between the jungle camps, and that actually meant that Xerxes could slide into that brush just before Trashy got there.
Yeah, and then obviously what he does, it's very, very simple. You queue up your E, which is the fear that's going to come in. So when Trashy actually face checks, instantly you're going to fear him, give you another auto tag on him, and then even with Trashy trying to like flash away, it's not going to be enough. That's the fear from Warwick.
Instant Ghost as well.
Instant Ghost, and then of course Exile coming down, and
thank you very much.
Easy peasy. Maybe Trashy can flash the wall into the Raptor camp, but that's hard to say. This gang I love, because notice how Xerxes here is baiting the ulti animation by jumping with Q instead. And that is what procs the flash from Wonder, so he can then ulti him right after and actually follow him. And that's the key thing with Warwick and his jump. It is definitely longer than the flash range. So if you just get them to flash first, you can always then jump after and actually catch them with ult.
Yeah, there we see Splyce discussing because the early game didn't go too well for them. We see Warwick getting off to a good start, and the Unicorns of Love at 15. They were up 1.6k gold, where usually they're down 1k.
Yeah, and another play that they did very well was making use of their composition. If you have a Shen in the top lane and you have Katarina in the mid lane, what you want to do is get vision control and roam for that bot lane. We saw Splyce play around it multiple times by trying to rotate away from the bot lane 2v2, but eventually they found themselves in the bot lane. And one thing we do have to note here is that Splyce make the minor mistake of, you know you're going to get pushed in this lane all the time. Look at Mickey, plays control ward 1, then he wards river, and later on he'll go for maybe some deep vision contest. But what ends up happening here is that there's no vision in his own jungle, and you can easily ward your own red buff as Karma here, or even the entrance to your jungle.
But it's also where Unicorns now have done a very good job setting up. With this control ward, Exile walks past now, and Xerxes putting down his to see, okay, we're not spotted by anything. And then, of course, there's a blast cone. You can see it on the map. They can use it to dodge around the tri-bush where Kobe has placed his ward. And it just allows like Unicorns to set up a really smooth dive in the bottom lane.
Yeah, just take a quick gander over to the top lane as well. Shen has pushed in, so there is no punish available. Turret's already down anyways. Beautiful execution. Even the teleport comes out from Splyce, and it's too little too late because they had too much fog of war to deal with.
Yeah, and these are the kind of plays where you just have to praise the aggressive team for like setting up really nicely, knowing with the blast cone and setting up the dive. And Splyce will look back and be like, we put the vision in the wrong place. We'll fix that for next time.
But as we then look further in the game, the things you mentioned could be good or bad for the Unicorns, is pulling the trigger always and making decisive plays, maybe when it's not opportune. And where H2K failed to capitalize on that last week, I think these were your words, Splyce found a way to play around it and shut down the Unicorns' aggressiveness.
Splyce were just really patient, and it forced Unicorns into a lot of rash decisions. This game would have been a lot shorter if it weren't for the interesting kind of double Fiesta Baron steal. I think we have one of them prepared for you guys as well that we can take a look at. It's a good punishment from Splyce here. So it starts with a good fight from Unicorns. Very few teams would go this deep, Martin.
Yeah. I'm almost going to say no teams, but like this is again no hesitation and aggressiveness of the Unicorns of Love that we like. But now,
you just expect him to disengage, go for the bait on Nashor. They still have Hylissang's ultimate available. Chachi, why you go so deep? And then Xerxes.
Wait, Xerxes, why do you go so deep? What is this? There are 3 Mountain Drakes. 3 Mountain Drakes. You can kill this Baron in like 10 seconds.
And you see Hylissang is like, oh, my jungler's diving in. I have to save him. Instead of using the ultimate on the Katarina, who would love displacement if she ultis next to people.
And they surely won't get Baron now.
The magic!
Yeah, the magic from the Unicorns.
Trashy's gonna hate his life. 850 damage from his smite, but he doesn't use it in time, and whoops.
If all else fails.
This Glitterlands deals 200 base damage.
That is Chaos style. That is what they introduced to the world. Monte Cristo still loves it, and we love it as well sometimes.
And then we want to wrap it all up with the last team fight, the crucial team fight, because it was still very back and forth, definitely with the Baron steal, but Splyce win this one.
Because we've talked a lot about what Unicorns did well and poorly, but I think the main strength here for Splyce just has to be their patience and their approach to taking down these fights. Look at Senkux, assassinating Samux in every fight, looking for the backline. The Unicorns could never find the reset because Splyce were always holding either a gap closer or a Zonias to prevent Exile from popping off.
Yeah, and we saw Mickey in this fight get really low. he doesn't stay around. He doesn't play greedy. He just walks away. Literally walks away because he knows Exile is going to try and get a reset. Karma as well turned out to be super valuable in this game. They obviously banned all the support. First, early pick the Karma, which Locket, Shield, Redemption, her own shields. Against the reset composition was very, very good for Splyce. They played the team fights in the end extremely well, and that's, again, why they can win.
I thoroughly enjoyed this breakdown, by the way, guys.
Especially their sieging. Did you like it?
Oh, Rumble ult with Jin ult. Beautiful. The Danes. The Danes.
All right, we didn't ask for...
always good at sieging, by the way. The Vikings are good.
We didn't ask for predictions before, so do you guys want to...
I'm going to say Splyce win the first game.
Yeah, I think Splyce will go 1-0 up, and then we'll have an exciting series on our hands.
All right, let's see. We're going to take a break to hunt for blood, but when we return, we'll have Game 2 between Splyce and Unicorns of Love with these trolls. Stick around.
Trolls?
Want to try and stop it, but let's see if Splyce can get the Baron.
Well, it looks like we had it before. Splyce are going to try and secure the Baron. It's stolen away by Xerxes, and now the fight is going nuts, but the rest of the Unicorns are dropping. Xerxes is nowhere in sight right now. Hylissang descends.
What?
No way! Kidding me?
Hylissang just stole the Baron!
He's taking out Xerxes. Exile, he's way too low. He's surrounded by Splyce members. Hylissang's jumped on. Unicorns have lost everything in this fight. It's just Chachi, and he's getting barbecued. Down to 0. That's the ace for Splyce. Let's go. The Unicorns are starting to fall to pieces. Chachi holding out to the last, but at the end, he will be the last man standing.